I was having this conversation with a friend of mine about the extent to which, like, when you build these worlds or kind of or when you're telling stories, whether or not things not fully adding up makes them more realistic. And because in the way that
Mm.
the real world is kind of messy, there's always things that are not never quite explained. And so it was, I think we were discussing, or I think he had written about like Tom Bombadil and Tolkien, and kind of just like this weird thing that's kind of out of left field. And like, there's ways of making it all kind of make sense, but it just kind of seems a little bit different. And there are other, and I think Santa Claus is probably a little too different for Narnia. But do you think there's something that, and I think the example that I was mentioning was, I think it was something from Neil Stevenson about, so like, if you look like the periodic table, it's kind of, there's order, but it's also kind of messy. And the equivalent would be like the pantheon of the Greek gods, where there's kind of some order, but then there's also ones that don't really make sense, and there's some that are kind
Mhm.
of, I don't know, half human, half god. It's kind of all weird and kind of messy, and like that, and it allows us to make things feel a little realistic, like a little bit more realistic, because we know the world is messy. Did you kind of think about anything there of like, how do you balance order and disorder and regularity and messiness?
Oh, it's absolutely true. I mean, I'm working on something new, which I'm actually doing with a collaborator. And periodically, we'll be looking at one of the systems we put in place, and we'll stop and we'll think, no, no, there has to be one that doesn't make sense. And so
Oh,
we'll
that's
build in
great.
an exception or two, which just breaks the whole thing. But you just don't look at it too closely, because if you don't, it doesn't feel real. And the paradigm that I use in the magician's books is of language, which of course it's system-like. We impose order upon it retroactively with out of declensions and conjugations and all that stuff. But the exceptions almost outnumber the rules, and that's how you know that's how you know that you're dealing with a world that feels properly real, is because it's frayed at the edges. Even Tolkien, who was an absolute fiend for order and for completion, probably never been a more rigorous builder than Tolkien. Exactly, he has to have Tom Bombadil in there. One of my favorite moments in The Lord of the Rings is when Tom Bombadil puts on the ring of power, and nothing happens.
Nothing.
You realize he's outside that order that governs the whole rest of the universe. And of course, Tom Bombadil, he is irritating with all his poetry. He talks too much, and he doesn't really advance the plot all that much. But he is that one piece that doesn't quite fit that makes the rest of it feel real.
You need a certain amount of exceptions to the rule, to kind of, yeah, make it feel realistic. And yeah, I view this almost as like, should it be like physics, where you have like a few equations that explains everything, or like biology, where there's kind of some general rules, we understand evolution, but it's really squishy and messy, and that kind of makes it feel that much more lived in, so to speak.
Yeah.